this is day 1 of our Python bootcamp class. By the end of today, you'll be pretty much familiar with all the fundamentals. So here's our schedule for this entire class. So in the first week, we'll try to go over fundamentals, and then week 2, data structures, an introduction to data structures. We'll still go over some fundamental data structures in today's session, but tomorrow we'll focus primarily on data structures, and then we'll go into object-oriented programming, which Python is an object-oriented programming language, in case you didn't know. Another person's joining. Okay, and then we'll spend about 2 weeks on that, and then we'll go into advanced programming, and then we'll spend the last week on some odds and ends to help hopefully get you ready for your if you're going to use Python in maybe like a science fair project, or maybe for a project to list on your resume or something like that along those lines. Okay. So, and then once at the end of the course, we'll have there will be a final project on we'll assign it on week 6. That's when we're scheduled to assign it, and so then that should give you 4 weeks to submit your work and to finalize what you're going to do to try to make it as best as possible. We're going to give you some assignments and also take attendance as well. So make sure you do both of those. We'll send assignments out after the class through email. And at the end, hopefully you'll get a course completion certificate as well. So be on the lookout for that. And this is going to be determined by your attendance and your grades. So make sure you do your best on those things as well. Okay. So moving on, let's see. Whoops. Okay. So just to get some more of an idea about the class. So when on the application form, there are a lot of people that registered that were of, people of pretty much really different age ranges. We had some people that were in middle and high school, some people that were below that, but that's perfectly fine as well. Some people above that, that's also, again, perfectly fine. So just go ahead and type in your which grade you're in right now, grade level, in the chat. If you've graduated school, that's fine. Just type that in the chat. Okay, so we have a lot of people from middle school and a few high schoolers too. Yeah, okay, great. So now let's get started on the actual stuff. Okay, so again, attendance is important. Make sure you attend all of our classes. It's not necessary to attend all, but try to attend as many as you can to get the most benefit. To get the course completion, we'll be referring to your attendance, considering that as a factor. So make sure you attend everything if you want to get that certificate at the end. And there will be a final project, so be on the lookout for that in coming weeks. And make sure you pay attention to these classes. They will be really helpful for you in that final project, and for all projects really. So after learning Python, I actually went to my first hackathon, and then I ended up getting 2nd place. So Python's actually really, really useful for all kinds of projects. If you're applying to a job, to get in that top 1% of the entire world, basically, right? Like Elon Musk, among them, chances are they wouldn't be where they are right now if they hadn't learned Python. Okay, so let's get into the actual material. So what is Python? Type in the chat what you think Python is. Okay, so someone said a computer language, a programming language, a type of code. Okay, coding. coding for objects. Okay, these are all pretty good guesses. Here's a picture of a Python. It's a green Python. I think it's located in Africa. Maybe I might be wrong, but I believe that's where it's from. But don't worry, this is not what we're talking about. Here's the Python we'll be talking about this class. It's a computer language, in case you didn't know that already. Here it is on a Mac. So you run, and this doesn't just run on laptops, computers. People use Python in things like drones, in AI, robotics, planes, pretty much any sort of computer that you could really think of. And pretty much almost for the majority of companies in the world use Python as a computer language. So so how many of these companies do you know, right? Uber, Netflix, Spotify, Instagram, Dropbox, Google, pretty much all of these companies use Python, right? MIT, that's not a company, but they use Python as well, a lot. So Python's really, really important, and it's a really great skill to have on your belt as you do all these fantastic projects to get you ahead in the world. So what is Python? It's a simple programming language. It's the whole point of Python is to develop programs that are easy to read programmatically. So another programming language is Java, but Java it's not as easy to read programmatically, which is why Python, which is really similar to Java, it is pretty much the same thing, but it's easy to read programmatically. And that's why they use Python in much more complicated levels of computer science, like AI, because it's easier to read and more people can understand it better. So here's a program in Java to say hello, right? It's a really simple program. So right here we have a comment. This is a comment. In Java, to write a comment, you use 2 slashes. And this is what it looks like. It looks kind of cryptic right now, right? What does public mean? What does class mean? What is a class? What is program? Well, program's the name of this program here. And then we have this here, this chunk of code that looks really cryptic, string. What is this box here, args? And then we actually write the word hello just in this line, and then we have a semicolon here. And this is all of this is just to write a program just to say hello, right? It's kind of cryptic, right? It's easy to make typos. It can get long and complicated very quickly. It's harder to stay organized because this is Java, right? With Java, it doesn't really matter where your lines are, right? You can so this could all be one line. I could make a Java program to say hello all in one line, and that would be perfectly fine. You actually have to go back and organize it yourself if you want it to, look to some sense neat, right? And this over here, this is a picture of Java. It's an island in Indonesia. And at least in this picture, it looks like a pretty beautiful place, right? What do you think? Yeah, there's like a mountain in the background and clouds. But this is the Java that we're talking about. In case you couldn't realize, this is a cup of coffee, which is some steam. But anyways, yeah, that's Java, and it's really cryptic. And then here's a Python program. And this does literally the exact same thing that this program does. It says hello, right? And look at the difference between, the line numbers here. We have 5 lines, but again, this could be in one line, one really long line that would say hello. But here we're doing it, and all we're saying is just print, and then in parentheses we said hello. And that's arguably so much simpler than Java, right? And that's kind of the whole point of Python. It's to make things look so simple that you could pretty much just read it as pure English. And anyway, Python syntax, how it's different. So in Python, we don't really use curly brackets or semicolons. Notice in Java, we used a semicolon here just for that line. And then we also use spacing to organize flow structure. We'll go over that in a bit. And then there's also no need for declaring data structure types, and we'll go over that in a bit too. So here's a comment or a comic, right? You can sort of see how, Python, the whole point of Python is not to make it complicated. So that's why we have sort of a frowny face there. of Python being angry. Okay, so now let's look at the data types. So there are more data types in Python. These are pretty much the most basic ones that we'll be going over today. There's the int, which is short for integer, and an integer is just a basic whole number like 109, right? Like you're counting numbers. So like a baby, when they first learn to count, they're counting in integers. And then a float is a basic decimal number, like 109.9 or 3.14 or something along those lines, right? A basic decimal number. And then a Boolean, it's true or false. It can have two values, right? True or false. And whenever you see a picture of computers which are filled with ones and zeros, so those are Boolean values. They're either true, which is the one, and then or false, which is the zero. And then we have strings. So a string is basic text, like this string over here. So this is a string. We use quotation marks on strings to mark it as a string. And then if you use it in an IDE, which I'll talk about that in a bit, this will be highlighted in a different color most likely. And strings are basically just, you can think of them as a string of characters, right? So like a character is like, the alphabet. Whenever you're typing in characters, okay? And then we also have a list. So a list is pretty much, if you know what an array is, this is kind of similar to an array. But a list is, it's basically we're taking these data types over here and we're sort of listing them down between these two brackets over here, separating them by commas. Okay, so now let's go into, well, first of all, does all of that make sense? Type yes if it does in the chat. Okay, so a lot of people said, yes, that does make sense. If it doesn't make sense, type in no. Nobody will know except me because I'm the only one that can see the chat. So by all means, if you don't understand anything, type in no. Don't feel obligated to type in yes. Okay, so everyone said yes. That does make sense. So let's move on to numbers. So numbers is going to be a big part of programming. You'll see, so programming is only really 10%. Well, programming in the real world, I should say, is only 10% of knowledge of of knowledge in the field of the language you're using. So like Python, it's only about 10% of learning, this is how I write, how I make a program that says hello. And then the other 90% of it is, using math. So, or math or, other sort of logic, algorithms, that kind of thing. So there's going to be a lot of math, but don't worry, if you're not good at math, that's perfectly fine. We'll be going through this together. So, don't feel afraid. Okay, so here's some basic operators. All of you should know these, hopefully. If you don't, that's, hopefully all of you know these. So this is the addition operator, should be straightforward. We add these two numbers. This is the multiplication operator. It's an asterisk, and it's if you hold shift and the 8 key, that's where that comes from. And then this is the minus sign, and this is the division sign. Okay, does all of this make sense? Type in yes if it does. Okay, everyone said yes. Okay, nobody said no for that, so I'm going to move on. And this is where things might get a little complicated. Okay, so we have, along with the basic ones, right? The 4 basic ones on your 4-function calculator, we also have other numerical operators too. So when we have 2 asterisks next to each other, right? Then this is what's called the exponential sign, right? So 1 raised to the power of 2. So this is basically saying we're doing 1 times 1. Well, first of all, I should probably ask, does everyone know what an exponent is? Okay, so we had one person say no. Okay, they said actually yes. Okay, they do know. So everyone said they know what an exponent is. And then this might not be as straightforward. This is what's called floor division. So basically what we're doing is we're taking this first number over here and then dividing that by the second number over here. And then we're taking, if it's a decimal number, then we're just going to lower it to the lowest int, right? So 1 divided by 2, that's 0.5, right? So we're going to go down to the lowest number, that the lowest whole number, okay? And then that's going to be our answer. So 1 divided by 2, that's 0.5. And then when we go down to the lowest whole number, that brings us to 0. And so that's what this operator is. It's called floor division. So 1 floor 2 is 0. And then over here we have what's called the modulo operator. And what this basically does is it gives us the remainder of 1 divided by 2. So the first number divided by the second number, and then what's the remainder of that? Okay, and then this is called absolute value. So we're basically calculating what's in the parentheses here, and we're finding the absolute value of that. So 1 minus 2 is -1, and then the absolute value of that is +1. So that's our answer, right? So what is absolute value? We're just taking if the number is negative, then it becomes positive. If the number is positive, then nothing changes. Okay, so did everyone understand what all of this? Okay, so let's go over the first 3 again. So 1 raised to the second power. Here, let me just open Paint, I guess. Okay. So okay, first of all, can everyone see that I'm on Paint right now? MS Paint. Okay, everyone can. So I'm gonna try to do this as fast as I can. So basically, when I say 1 raised to the power of 2, I write it like this in math. So this is basically saying 1 times 1, right? So there are 2 1s in here, so that's why there's a 2 there. If I said 1 to the power of 3, then that would be 1 times 1 times 1, okay? And then the other one, which was floor division, is, so let's see. Okay. So floor division is, so I divide the 2 numbers, right? So let's say I have 3 divided by 5. Okay, so this would be 3 divided by 5. Sorry about this. I'm not a math expert either. Is 0.6. So 0.6, right? And so then we just basically take this to the lowest number. So if we had a number line here, right, and this is 0, and this was 1, right, then 0.6 would probably be around over here, right? 0.6. So basically, we take this number and then reduce it to the lowest whole number, which is 0, because there's no, a whole number is a number with no decimal points after it, right? So then the answer of 3, 4, 5 would be 0. Okay, and then the last one, modulo. So basically, if we had so again, let's do the 3 divided by 5 example. So 3, it only fits into 5 once, right? If we had 3 twice, we'd get 6, which is 1 over. So if we had 5, right? So here's 5, and then 3 is maybe like over here. Then a modulo would be, what is the remainder here? So this would be 2. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so someone asked the question about homework. So homework will be given, it will be sent in an email after the class. Don't expect it immediately. Maybe like give us a day or two to send out the homework, but you will get homework. Don't worry about it right now. Just check your email. Make sure you check your email for updates. Okay, so next we have numerical comparison operators. Basically, what these do is they check the number at the beginning and the number at the end and compares the numbers, right? So in all of these, we get either true or false. So if the expression is true, if it's valid, then Python will give us a Boolean value of true, right? So 1, and this is called the equals operator. So to do this, we just put 2 equal signs next to each other, and we just basically check the value of this, which is 1, and then check the value of the other side, which is also 1. And since both of the values are the same, this statement is true, okay? And then we also have what's called the not equal to operator. So to do this, we just put an explanation mark at the beginning, and then we put an equal sign, and then if this number is not equal to this number, then we give out true. Okay, I know that sounds a little weird saying it out loud, but hopefully this is intuitive and makes sense. But think of it as just the opposite of the equal sign operator. Okay, and then here we have the greater than operator, which this should be straightforward. Is this value greater than this value? If yes, we return true. If no, we return false. Is this value less than this value? If yes, we return true. If no, we return false. And then here we have the greater than or equal to operator. Basically, is this value greater than or equal to this value? If yes, return true, no, return false, and the same thing here, but less than. Okay, does all of this make sense? Okay, so about 5 people said yes. Where's everybody else? Okay, so most people responded. Okay, let's move on. Okay, what's that in the distance? It's coming closer. It's coming closer. Okay, does anyone recognize what this is? I'll give you a hint. This is related to math. If any of you are into math. No, it's not a virus. Virus, corona, a design. Mandelbrot fractal? Yes, that is correct. It is a Mandelbrot fractal. So basically, how this is made using what's called complex numbers, right? And so what is a complex number, you ask? Well, complex numbers are basically just a real number with an imaginary number as well. So what is an imaginary number? Well, try to think of all the numbers that you could possibly think of, right? You could think of, I can think of, 1,000 or negative 1,000, pretty much every number on the number line. But an imaginary number, on the other hand, it's a number that essentially doesn't exist. That's why it's called imaginary, right? So basically, look at this cartoon here. So we have this number 6 that's playing with this. This is the square root sign of the -1 number. And -1, it doesn't exist, right? We can do the square root of +1, which is 1, because 1 times 1 is 1. But the square root of -1, it's not a real thing, right? It's a number that doesn't exist. So that's why it's an imaginary. So that's, if you didn't get the joke before, that's what the joke is referring to. So basically, this would be like 1i, and that would be that would be what this is, how we'd refer to this in mathematical form. But in Python, for complex numbers, we use the letter j, which is why I said 2 plus 3j, which is equal to 2 plus 3i in complex number notation. Why do we use j? It's because that's what engineers use. More specifically, engineers at MIT. And engineers are weird. That's what no, I'm just kidding. Engineers, they use J because I is sometimes used for voltage in electricity. So that's why we use J in Python, in case you were wondering. Okay, so let's move on. We have Booleans. So what is a Boolean? A Boolean is true or false, right? It has two values. And to compare Booleans, we can use the true, we can use all of the operators over here. We can use all of these operators that we use for numerical comparisons. And then for Booleans, we also have the or and the and. So what is the or? The or basically says, if this is true, or if this is true, then the whole thing is true, right? And then what is the and? The and says, if this is true, and if this is true, then the whole thing is true, right? So does oh wait, I think I forgot to ask, but did everyone understand what all of these are? And how all of these work? Okay, so this should be straightforward, hopefully. And then did everyone understand what a complex number is? Okay, so someone said no. So a complex number is basically, you probably won't be using this in Python unless you're doing some advanced math. Maybe more specifically, probably linear algebra. So basically what this is so this part is an imaginary number. So 3i is the same thing as the square root of -9. And then this part would be the real number, right? Because 2 is a real number, but 3i is not a real number. So this would basically work as, and Python has its own data type called complex, which is a complex number. And so if I did complex 2, 3, then that would give me 2 plus 3i. Okay, and so and this essentially works in for most likely whatever case you're using it for, if you do happen to be using it. So if I were to multiply two complex numbers in Python, I'd get the answer that you'd get in math. So just to show you, I think I have my Python interpreter open here. So I'll just I'll just hide all that. And then I'll do complex. Well, first of all, can everyone see this black thing here? Yes, okay. So this is what's called a command line interface, more specifically a CLI, which stands for command line interface. So whenever you hear the word command or terminal or command prompt or anything like that, they're talking about this. And Python has its own command prompt. So when you first download Python, this is probably what you'll get. And you can type pretty much whatever expression you really need. Just take one more time. And so if I was doing, like x equals 1, right? So that's actual Python code there. And then we saw that Python code on the first slide, which was print hello. So I'll just type that in, and it prints out hello. Well, by print, it means, we print to our terminal here. But anyways, if I did complex, right? And I said 2, 3, then it would give me the complex number over here. And then if I did that and then times another complex number, right? Then it would give me the answer, the mathematical answer for that. Okay, so anyway, let's move on now to Booleans, and then we finish that. Well, did everyone understand this? Okay, so most people said yes. Nobody said no, so we're gonna move on. And then this is what's called a string. I think we might have briefly mentioned it before, but a string is basically a string of characters here. So here we're using English characters, but you can also use pretty much any character there is. So this is Russian for hello. This is Spanish for hello. I'm not sure which hello this is. This is English for hello. And anyway, for writing a string, you basically write the word or whatever you're writing and then surround it by quotes. So here I'm using apostrophes, which are also called single quotes. Here I'm using normal quotes, and then here I'm using triple quotes, right? So for triple quotes, you can do 3 quotation marks or 3 apostrophes. And you use these when you're writing a string that's going to be on multiple lines, right? So I can open my Python interpreter. You know what, actually, hopefully you should understand that without me having to open it. Okay, so basically the string data type, it's represented by this, the letters str in lowercase. And then here we have str of 0. So strings are also kind of like arrays, where if you know what an array is, you know, I'm not going to say array, I'm going to say list, okay? So list is, as you saw before, it's just a list of, you know, things, right? So basically the string, if I wrote the name of the string, right? And then if I did brackets and then a number, it would give me the character at that number, right? So if I open my Python CLI and then I typed in, I'm gonna make a string, right? And I'm gonna call it hello. And then and then when I'm typing in x equals to, I'm making the string and then I'm assigning it to the variable x, okay? So what this does is now the word hello is kind of stored inside the letter x. So if I typed in x and hit enter, then I'd get the word hello in a string, as a string. And then if I did x of 0, that would give me the first character in the string hello. So this would give me h, and then if I did x of 1, which is the second character, right, I get e, and then so type in the chat, what would I get if I typed in x of 3? This should be easy. Okay. One person answered. Okay, yeah, there's everyone. Yeah, it's an L, right? Get an L. Because we start off counting by 0, start off counting from 0, sorry, and then we say 0, 1, 2, 3, and that gets us to this L here. And, okay. So let's move on, or no, before we do that, so this is another notation in Python where we use a colon. So this will give us the string from the 0 character up to the 3rd character there, or the 0 character to the 3 character. So if I type that in, right, it would give me a string from basically the first 3 letters in hello, right? So HEL. Okay, so does all of that make sense? Okay, nobody said that doesn't make sense, so I'm gonna move on. And this is like a continuation of strings. So some basic tools you should know are this character. If you type this in a string, then that basically gives you, it takes you to the next line. So if I made a string and said x is equal to /n, and then I said like hello, and then there I said, and then I said the word there after the /n, make that a little easier to see. Okay. And then if I called x, then it would, whoops. So then if I said x, okay, that's weird. Just check my notes. Okay, so it should be a \n. So maybe if I typed in dots, that didn't do it. Okay, I'll try to get back to you on that. Anyway, we have the dot join, which basically it joins these letters separated by 3 dots. So we have the first letter A, and then 3 dots, and then the second letter B, 3 dots, and so on, right? So, and then we have this, which capitalizes the first letter of your string, and then this, which returns a Boolean, right? So if you do your string and then dot capitalize, it will capitalize the first letter in your string. So if I said x dot capitalize, then it would capitalize the first letter in hello there. And then ends with is another thing you can do. So x dot ends with, and so basically you type in the whatever you want to check if it ends with. So if it ends with an E, then this will return true. If it doesn't, it will return false. And since it ends with an E, we get true. And so you get the idea. There's also a starts with, and there's this. This is basically how you format a string. So if I had a string, if this was my string, then and I wanted to format it like this, so it would basically return the replace the first curly braces with the first variable in these parentheses, and so on. So then that way, if you were going to do, well, this should make sense as you get into coding throughout the class. And so, but if you download Python 3, which is the Python version that you should be downloading when you get to that point, there's what's called an F string. And this comes, Python 3.6 or greater. And basically, if you declare variables, right? So like if we declared a name variable and a hobby variable, then Python would automatically put that in the string. So here I have the letter F because this is an F string, and then I'm replacing this with the name. So if the name was Andrew, we'd replace name with Andrew. So it would say, hi, my name is Andrew, and I like to, and then whatever the hobby variable is. So here we have name and job, and we said and then this would be Andrew got a job at, and then we look at the job, which is Microsoft. So it would say Andrew got a job at Microsoft. And then here we have the dot split function, and this will basically make a list of your string, and it separates. How it makes the list is it takes the first part of your string, and then it looks at the key put in the split parentheses, and then it will split your string based on whatever you put here. So if I did that, then so I'll just do that real quick to show you, and then B, C, D, E, right? And then let's say I say dot split with comma and a space, and you can see it now made a list of splitting the by splitting along the lines of this comma here. And then isDigit, it's basically a function that returns. Does it have to be capital? No, it does not have to be capital. This could be any string, because this is part of the string. If it was part of the function, then yes, you have to write it exactly how the function is spelled. But since this is a string, we can set it to whatever we want. So I could set it to, I could set it to anything, and it would still split it. Okay. And then we have isDigit, which basically checks if if whatever your variable is a digit. So if I said 7.isDigit, whoops, maybe my Python version is off. Right, this is Python 3.7, so that's why it's being a little weird. But please download Python 3.6, as you can see here. When you get to that point, I also have Python 3.6. It just didn't pull up when I opened my computer. But for the most part, most of the functions are the same. The assignments and everything will be in Python 3.6, so don't worry about that. You also have an upper, which basically, if you have a string of letters, it will change all those letters to uppercase, and a string of letters will change all those letters to lowercase. So if I made a string, right, and it's all uppercase, and then I said dot lower, then it would, whoops. Remember, Python is case sensitive, so this has to be in lowercase, and then it would make the string in lowercase. And then if I said dot upper, it would make whatever this is and change it to uppercase. So we'd get the string in uppercase letters. And then now lists. So a list is basically an array of things. They don't all have to be the same thing either. So we have a number here, an int here, a string here, a Boolean value here, and another Boolean value here. So, and we're storing that in X, okay? So X is our variable. And in lists, we have these functions here. We're running a little low on time, so I'm not gonna go through all of these, but basically what this does is if you say x.append and then type in something here, then it will put that, whatever you type in here, at the end of your list. And then pop, basically it returns what the last value is in your list, and it will remove it from the list. Remove, what that does is it just takes out the whatever you wanted to remove it from your list. And what this does is, I should probably go over this. So let's say I had a list and it was 1, 2, 3, right? And X is my list. And then basically just like strings is if I put in a range here, so 1 to 3, or no, 1 to 2, sorry, it will, or no, I guess I could put 1 to 3. So what this does is it's going to go from the first to the third. But remember, we count from 0 in Python. So 0, and so 1, and then 2. And then notice there's no third one here. But when in Python, when we're giving a range, it doesn't count the last number. So it would only go from 1, 2, and then if it's 3, we're just going to leave that off from whatever we're recording. So this would be 2 and 3 here, because 1, 2, and then 3, there's no third one. So but if I did 1, 4, then that there's no third one either there. So or fourth one. So we're just going to leave that off. And in case you are still wondering what would happen if I did 1 to 2, that would just give me 2, because we go from our first one, right? And then we go to our second one, or 0, 1, 2, our second index. And then we know that we're not counting this number here. So we're only counting from this to this number, but not including this number. So this is going to return this value over here. Okay. And then another rule of thumb is Python obeys order of operations. There's a table of order of operations here, as you can see, in the order that they go in. So here's a link. I'll copy and paste that link in the chat if I can. Okay, this is. Okay. So here's the link in case you want to check it out. And then next we have some other things that you should know. So the type is, it basically tells you what the type is of your whatever your variable is. So if I said type and then I typed in the number 1, it would tell me what type this number is. So this is an int, so that's why we got class int. And if I typed in 2.2, then I get a float, because remember a float is a decimal number. And then if I typed in type and then true, I get bool, because which is the Python notation for Boolean, and then and so on, right? If I typed in string, I get whoops. I typed in a string, right? So like ABCD, then I get str. Okay, so that's another thing to do. Another thing to keep in mind is that a Boolean, it's not just like true or false, or it is just true or false, but there's more to it than that. A Boolean, whenever I type in true, that's interchangeable with the number 1. So true is also going to be, which it also works for the number 1. So if I said true plus, 3, right? Can anyone guess what this would be? Type in the chat. Okay, yeah, this would be 4. Weird. Okay, yeah, it would be 4, because true is interchangeable with the number 1. And likewise, false is also interchangeable with the number 0. So if I said like false times 8, then I get 0, right? So I could do something like false plus true, which looks really weird if you don't know Python. But now that you guys know Python, or some of it at least, you'll know that this is 1. Okay. Then another thing is the isInstance function, which basically it returns a Boolean value depending on what your on your variable. So if I said, let's say I had a variable called x, right? So what was x again? X was a list. We made x a list over here. And so if I typed in list, then x is a list, is an instance, that's what we call it. So x is an instance of the list class, and that's why we get true, because this is true, x is a list. But if I said, x is equal to 0, right? And then I asked if x is a list, then I get false. But anyways, we just discussed how Booleans are also, you can change the word true with 1 and false with 0. So likewise, if I typed in true, and then if I asked is true an int, because 1 is an int, then I'd get true, because true is also 1, which is an int. And then if I did is true a Boolean, then this is also true, right? Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, we had 3 people say yes. Okay, 4 people said yes, 5 people said yes. Okay. And we have more yeses. Okay, so this hopefully makes sense to you, that true and false are Booleans, but can also be ints too. But keep in mind that they default to Boolean. So if I did type true, I'd still get that, it would still say that true is a Boolean, because that's our default go-to data type for true. And then we also have the none type, which this is basically, if you know Java, this is basically the same thing as null. And basically what this is the none type, it's nothing. So if I said x, right, x is 0, but if I said x is equal to none, and then I typed in x, then I'd get nothing. X is empty. There's no value stored for x. Okay, and so that's what the none type is. And then print, we already went over print and how to print something. And then this is what's called a delimiter. And remember when I said that Python, it's all about how readable you are. The whole point of the main difference between Python and Java is that Python, the whole point of it is to be simple and readable, and you should be able to know what's going on in like a snap, right? So the delimiter, it doesn't really do anything at all. The whole point of the delimiter is to sort of just look nicer. So here we have the number 1 million. I know that, so everyone here said that or most people said that they were from the US, but I know that some people aren't from the US as well. So, but anyways, in the US, this is 1 million, and we put a comma here and a comma here. I know that other countries use a different format, but anyways, this is just the same thing as 1 million as normal. But just when you're typing a program, this makes it easier to read. It doesn't do anything other than that. Okay, so to download Python, this is the link, and we're running out of time, so I actually made a Kahoot game that I was hoping you all could join. So just go to kahoot.it, just type that in your URL, and that would take you to this. And so once that starts, you should see the code. So here's the code, right? Go to kahoot.it, type in this code, and there will be questions related to what we went over today. Can you please share the link for Python? Yes, I will share the link for Python. Unfortunately, we ran out of time today. I will email this link to all of you with some more instructions on how to download Python as part of your homework. Remember I said I was going to give homework to all of you. So if you're hoping to evade homework today, unfortunately, that's not what's going to happen. You're going to have homework, and part of it will be to download Python using this guide here. If you want, you can get the link right now, but I'll even put it in the chat. But I was hoping to send this through email because I thought that would be easier. And more information on homework and assignments will be through email. Okay. So we have 9 players. Okay. So I'm gonna wait another 10 seconds. If nobody joins, we're gonna start. Okay, so we have been 10 seconds, nobody else joined. So we're gonna start. Keep in mind the game pin is still down here. Okay, so what is the minimum number of lines needed to print hello in Python? Nobody answered that. Okay. Did anyone not understand when I said was there something that went wrong or something like that? Can someone type in the chat? Time went by too fast? Okay. Did not let you answer. Okay. It's a little weird. If it happens again, I'll go back to the settings and change it. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. Okay, let's try it. Let's try this one. So what is the minimum number of lines needed to print hello in Java? 10 answers? I thought only 9 people joined. That's really weird. Okay, maybe some more people joined. Okay, so the correct answer was 1. Remember when I said that with Java, you can go back to that slide. So Java, this is how a Java program would be to say hello. And remember that in Java, the spacing doesn't really matter. All of this could be on one line, and it would still work as normal, as intended. So next we have Naeem in first place, followed by Josh, and then Silver Wolf, Taha, and Diolo. Okay, so, but there's 15 questions, so there's still time to catch up. How do you print ABCD in Python 3? So this is the correct way to print ABCD. For those of you that clicked on red, I can see where you were going, but keep in mind that since this is a function, it's case sensitive too, so it has to be in all lowercase, right? If I went to Python right now and I typed in print and then ABCD like this, then it wouldn't work because print has to be in lowercase. Okay. So let's go to the next one, and we have Ray T in first place, and followed by Taha, Naeem, and Josh, and Fatima. Okay, let's keep that going. It's for twice as many points. What would Python return for the following equation? Okay, so the correct answer was yellow. So let's go back to the thing. So remember, Python follows order of operations. So -9 times 2, or you don't even need to make this negative. It's 9 times 2, which is 18. And then 2 plus 2 is 4. 4 minus 18 is -14. So that's where that came from. Fortunately, more people chose red, -10. So 2 plus 2 is 4. Okay, yeah. So remember, Python follows order of operations. So if you did have that link open, which I sent in the chat earlier, if you don't have it open, you're free to open it up and use that as a reference if you want. But remember, Python does follow order of operations, and in order of operations, you do multiplication first. This isn't specific to Python either. You use this in math all the time too. So let's move on. We have LV2, Imran, Naeem that joined the leaderboard. What would Java return for the following equation? And we have the same equation too. Okay, yep. So Java also follows order of operations as well. So those of you that clicked red, that's the same mistake as last time. Just remember that Java and Python both follow order of operations. Okay, so we have LV2 in first place. Did anyone join? Yeah, I think Silver Wolf joined the leaderboard now. Let's move on. What would Python return for this? Okay, the correct answer is it would return an error. So remember I said that functions are case sensitive. I know that all this sounds really, nitpicky and really annoying, but this is the reality behind Python. You have to be aware of these kinds of things. So if I typed in type and then 100, I'd get, it would say I'd get that. But if I typed in the word type like that, I'd get an error because, type, for the functions, you have to keep them in lowercase unless otherwise specified. So let's see, we have answers all over the place. Most people said red, an integer. I think I showed you from here that, did I show you? Yeah. So remember, Python, it returns, if you type in an int here, it returns this sort of format. Okay, so it doesn't tell you, most likely you won't really see the word integer in Python code. That's just how it is. Okay, so Fatima is now first place. What would Python return for this? Okay, only one person got this right. So this is a string because we put this in quotes. Okay, remember I said strings aren't just for letters. You can put pretty much anything in a string, even if it's a different language. Where was that? Yeah, here. You can put pretty much anything in a string, even if it's any character in the string at least. And don't be fooled, even if strings can also have numbers as well. Only one person got this correct. People that said class int. I see where you were going. People that said int. Remember that we get, whenever we use the type function, we get a value in this format. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so the answer was it would return, class int in quotes like that. So this is type 100, remember? So the people that said it would return an error, no, this is perfectly valid. If I typed it in, did I type it in? Yeah, I typed it in right here in front of you too. So hopefully you should have recognized that. Remember to keep your eye open for these kinds of small errors, because in programming, that's one of the most annoying things about programming, but sadly, that's just what you have to deal with. So people that said integer and int, remember again, we return, whenever we use the type function, we return values in this format with the two greater than or equal to, or less than signs. Okay, next. So I think by mistake, I forgot to mention this in our slides, but there is a question in this Kahoot which asks which one is faster, Java or Python. Java is actually faster because Java is, remember Java, it is longer to write, but the only reason that, or for the most part, the reason that people use Java over Python, because I mean, think about this, right? When you look at this, you think, who would want to use Java when you can use Python, which is so much simpler, right? But Java, the main advantage of Java is it's faster because this is it's already compiled. The computer can understand this easier than it understands this. So Python, it's an interpreted language. So the computer actually has to, translate what this is saying into a usable, bytecode. So that's the main reason that Java is faster than Python. For your purposes, that shouldn't matter. Python, for most competitions, if you're using Java or Python, you'll rarely have an advantage of using Java over Python. That's why you see in most competitions people use Python instead. Anyway, so when that question comes up, make sure you choose Java. Okay. Okay. So let's look. We had most people said true. Wait, that might be a mistake. Okay, sorry about that. That was probably a mistake. Is int, or no, that wasn't a mistake. Sorry, that was my bad. This is not valid because remember when we have quotes, right, around a value, this is a string, right? So if I typed in is instance and then quotes around the word true, and then comma int, right, we get false because this is a string value. We have this surrounded by quotes. So if I said, str, then it would be true. So that's why this is actually false. So good job to the people that did find that. If you thought that was an error, this is not an error. This is perfectly valid code. It just returns false, not true. Okay, so Taha is first place now. Okay. So is instance true bool? This is true because remember the word or the variable true or the instance true is a Boolean instance. And we represent this in Python using bool, right? So let's see if I can find it. So remember type true is of type bool. I even typed it out here. So if you caught that, then you'd recognize that and then you'd recognize that as true. Because this is, word for word, the exact same thing on that question. So let's go on to the next one. We have Silver Wolf that now entered the leaderboard. Okay. So is instance true and int? Remember, true, it's a Boolean, so it can also be represented as the number 1, and therefore it is an int. So that's why the answer for this is true. I think I might have typed that out as well. Yeah, I did. In fact, right above the spot where I just highlighted in that last question. So if you had that keen eye that saw that, then good job, you recognize that. So that's why it's not false, and this is not an error. Okay, so Naeem joined the leaderboard now. Okay, so most people said 0. So why is that? Why is this not 0? Because remember, the answer is 1, and nobody got this correct. Okay, so some people said true, some people said it was an error, or one person said for each, and then pretty much everyone else said 0. So remember that true, it's represented as a 1. True here is also represented as a 1, and then false is represented as a 0, right? And then order of operations says that 1 times 0 is 0, and then 1 minus 0 is 1. So that's why the answer for that was 1. If you don't believe me, I'll type it in. True minus true times false which is 1. Okay. So hopefully you don't make that mistake again in the future. When you're, be careful to watch out for these kinds of small errors that go lurking. Nobody here, caught that. So don't feel bad if you got it wrong. Okay, so this is kind of a, hopefully you can tell that this requires more thought. So take your time. You still have like 30 seconds to think this through. If you want, you can still have that link open to check, double check your order of operations. So the answer for this was -125. 4 people got that right. Good job if you did. This is kind of a long one. If you want, I don't think we're already over by a few minutes, by quite a few minutes. So unfortunately, I can't, go over that because it's kind of a long question. But mathematically, this is the answer. Okay, so now we have Ray in first place, and LV2 has joined the leaderboard. So remember this line here, this is another shorthand for the word or. So the line in the middle between these two parentheses, this is or. So the same thing as the or. So if this is true or if this is true, then the whole thing is true. Remember that when you're answering. Okay, so all of you, or most of you, recognize that this is true. So this list over here is not equal to this list because they're not the same. They don't have the same value. So this is true here, and true minus true, which is 1 minus 1, which is also the same thing as 0, is equal to false, which is also the same thing as 0. So this is also true. So no matter which one you started working on first, you should have got the answer true, because remember, it's this, if this or this is true, then the whole thing is true. So it's pretty much all truths. So that hopefully helped you answer this. Let's move on to the next one. This might be the last one, I think. Yeah, it's the last one. Which language is faster? I told you the answer to this. Hopefully you were paying attention. And you can get this. This is easy. Okay, so the answer was Java. I think I told you that. I remember telling you the answer somewhere halfway, about halfway through the Kahoot. So hopefully you got it from there. So just remember this in the future. Java is faster than Python, but it's only a little bit faster. So the main difference between the speeds are, for the most part, for your purposes, it would be negligible. So if you know Java already, then there's really no difference. Sorry about that. I got disconnected for a little bit. Anyway, oops. I think there might have been some problem with my internet connection. Anyways, I'm back now, and let's see who the winners are before we end. Third place, Silver Wolf. First place. So if you want, you can screenshot this so you can remember this for as long as you want. So that's the end of our class for today. I hope you enjoyed. We'll be sending some more material and some assignments later on, so be on the lookout for that. Make sure you check your email. I think we had some people that didn't join today, but make sure that you join as many classes as you can, because that will be taken into consideration when we're giving out the certificates for everyone. Okay, so hope you enjoyed. That's the end of our class. You can feel free to leave now if you want to, but that's it. So goodbye. Hope you have a great day, and see you next week. one more thing. If you have any questions about anything that happened today or about the class in general, please email us at python.help@takeaction.org. The same email where you got the link for the Zoom meeting from. You can just respond to that with your questions, and we'll answer as fast as we can. So see you.